and welcome to Aliens Revealed Live. I'm your host, Dean Caparella, here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Alien abductions, monster-infested ranches, men in black, near-death experiences, close encounter experiences, and more. We speak to some of the most amazing people on the planet, ready and willing to share their chilling stories with you. And they all come from the Aliens Revealed Live files here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Well, missing time is one of the signs of alien abduction. Many abductees are unable to account missing time from several hours to several days. Denise Stoner is a MUFON National Experiencer Research Team member working with Director of Experiencer Research Kathleen Martin. She experienced the missing time phenomenon almost 40 years ago. Stoner has had abduction experiences since the age of 2.5. Her life really changed on a night in Colorado in 1982 when travelling with her family. They were heading to a campsite to meet up with other family members, but this time they were going to be late arriving. What happened next is remarkable. This experience involved other members of her family. Missing time is synonymous with alien abduction events, and many experienced report lost time, but it's not the only sign of an alien abduction. In Denise Stoner's case, she inherited heightened intuitiveness. It's a symptom also reported by other experiencers following alien contact. It's also a symptom near-death experiencers report when they return. For many, it's described as an upgrade, while some are not quite so sure. Stoner says this wasn't a one-off experience. She says it continued to happen, although it doesn't always with people who have been abducted. During the Colorado episode, and while missing time and heightened intuitiveness were signs of an alien abduction, the prospect of the visitors coming back for her on a regular basis was frightening. Stoner says the fear never leaves you, but it disappears once you're on board the craft. She explains this in our interview, so let's welcome in Denise Stoner. Hi, Denise.
Thank you for inviting me.
Good to have you with us. Denise, you've had quite an interesting journey over the last 30 or 40 years, and you were telling me off air it actually started back when you were 2.5, but then ramped up on a night in Colorado in 1982. Can you describe what happened?
Yes, I sure can. My husband and I and our daughter and little dog always traveled across a glacier valley called South Park most every weekend for several years to a campsite. There was only one road that took us there. We stopped at a mountain pass and got out of the car and rested before we traveled across that park. Took us about an hour and a half to cross that valley. We could look down on a little town called Jefferson, and once past that, there was nothing, maybe one ranch on the other side. You could look out across. It was high desert, so we would look out across that. And we got back in the car, and when I looked across the valley, I could see two bright lights, and they were so bright I couldn't see what they were attached to over the desert. And we traveled down, looking down across the valley, and as we went down that mountain pass, I could see the lights coming across towards the road. The only thing next to the road were snow breaks made of wood, so that either snow, anything that could come across like tumbleweeds at night would prevent trucks and cars from getting into accidents if they were hit by anything blowing that way from the desert. So as we drove across, the lights lifted up and came over the top of our car. And I looked up, and when they were over the top of the car, I could see, looking out the window, that they were attached to a huge something that was very dark. And then I started to talk to my husband, and he was holding on to the steering wheel and was not responding to me. And I felt the car start to go sideways left on the road, and the tires were scraping because they were made to go forward, not sideways. And then the car lifted up, lifted over those snow breaks made of wood, right over the top and off into the desert. We were above the road, above the desert. And we went quite a ways out and finally settled down. The lights came over the hood of the car, and an object landed in front of us. And at that point, I blacked out. I don't remember anything until both of us found ourselves at the top of a place called Trout Creek Pass, the mountains on the other side. And we had no idea how we got there. It had been broad daylight. We intended to reach our campsite in daylight with the sun shining so that we didn't have to travel in the dark. It was dark. Our headlights were on. The motor was running. We had no idea how we got there. And my husband had set the meter so we would know how many miles we had traveled. The odometer, it indicated that we had not traveled across that valley. Nothing had changed. So we were a little bit spooked, a little bit disoriented, wondered what had happened, and we knew at that point that my parents and friends who were waiting for us at the camp would be very concerned. So we decided we better just keep on going and head for camp that was about 7 to 9 miles down the road, and that's exactly what we did. And when we got there, my parents and friends were walking down a dirt road. Back then, no cell phones. They were going to ask the caretaker of the ranch where our campsite was if they could use the phone and ask if there had been any accidents on that highway, call hospitals, call police departments, and they saw us coming down the road and asking us, where have you been? And of course, we had to respond, we don't know. We have no idea where we've been.
Had you realised at this stage that a certain amount of time had gone past?
Oh, yes. Yes. We realized something had happened. I remembered the lights. I remembered that something was over the car. I remembered floating off into the desert in the car. But that's all I remembered. But I felt this interior fear inside me. Something had gone on that wasn't right.
Okay. When did you begin to realise that you may have been part of an abduction event?
Well, since I'd had abductions from the time I was 2.5, and they just came and took me when I was younger, but none of this lifting up, a whole family taken, it was different. Something had happened that hadn't occurred before. But I asked my husband, do you think we've been abducted? And he was saying, I don't know. He really didn't want to go over that right then. He was just wanting to try and absorb what had gone on, what happened. His odometer wasn't working, or he wanted to look over the whole thing before commenting.
Okay, so what was your next move? You know, once you thought that you had been abducted, did you really start to investigate that particular incident?
Right then, that weekend, I did not. My mom kept asking, where have you been? What did you do? She was the type that she had to know. She wanted answers. My dad worked for aerospace company, and he could keep secrets like nobody. And so he just said, let's leave it alone, if that's what you want. But by the time I got back home and went back to work, I worked for the federal government myself, I was starting to think I needed to ask some questions and find someone who could help me.
And that's when you eventually met with Kathleen Marden?
No, the first person I met with was Dr. Bob Romack. Mm-hmm. He became a very good friend, and he was experimenting with hypnosis. First of all, to see how he could help people using hypnosis for pain control, for smoking cessation and for weight loss. And he was then looking for people who were good subjects. So I signed up for that. And then we found out we both had a curiosity about the same type of thing, UFOs, abductions, and so forth. And he offered to help me. So that's what he did.
Did you notice any physical changes after that particular incident?
I did. I noticed that I could predict with pretty good accuracy whether I should get in a car and drive, whether my husband should go anywhere. If I was out somewhere and I knew I shouldn't take a certain road or a certain street, or whether I should not go any further and head home, that type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess you had heightened senses and perception?
Yes, yes, with the ability to predict future events with a high amount of accuracy also.
That's interesting because some near-death experience people that I've spoken to come back and experience the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, so was that a one-off for you, or did it continue to happen?
It continued to happen, and it doesn't always with people who have been abducted. Sometimes it lasts 2 weeks, sometimes a couple of months. However, I had had a near-death experience and came back with that ability, and this just heightened it more.
Okay, so life as an abduction experiencer. So in a nutshell, what's it been like for you?
Well, it's been interesting. It's been frightening. It's raised my curiosity to the point where I need to know more. Who has been involved, in what way, and how many types of entities have they met? Have they had near-death experiences to go along with this? What were they? How did that work? It just keeps on and on and on. Would I want it to stop? No.
I mean, does it become easier to handle as time goes by, or is it something that it's difficult to live with?
Boy, that's a complicated question in many ways. The fear never changes until you are taken. Once you're taken, you're aboard the craft, the fear leaves you. Once you're brought back, you still have a little bit of fear, and you realize what happened, and you realize you see, well, I call him my escort. That's all okay. But then you wonder, when is it going to happen again? Sometimes you're given clues that it's coming. You know a certain day, a certain time, it's coming. Do I want to stop it this time? Should I try? It's a mixture of emotions.
Could you stop it?
I have a couple of times, not with that particular escort, but with a particular type of entity that I don't care for.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about you. Well, let's fast forward. When you finally realised where you were being taken to, who was there with you? Can you describe a bit about the environment that you were taken to? When you eventually found out.
I've been in maybe 4 or 5 different types of crafts. And some of them, the openings that you have to go through, I'm guessing, are not large enough for humans. So they break you apart molecularly and take you into a type of beam that's frightening. That's very frightening and painful. And you realize that you are just broken. You're broken, and you don't know if you're going to get put back together, and then suddenly you're on the craft and you are a human in one piece again. Although I realized that is similar to what I experienced as a near-death experience. I was not in my vessel, my human parts and pieces. It was similar, so I kind of lost that fear. So the vessel, when I was inside it, or the craft, was very small. There wasn't much to it. I saw no seams. I saw no existing. There was light, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. So that was basically the small craft. The larger ones, there were hallways. You could see an area where there was an operating system of some kind. You could see entities that were some, I guess, in charge, and some were responding to instructions. The hallway was lined with small robotic ETs, the type you would say had the great big eyes, the grays. But those, I'm sure, were robots. I called them soldiers. And they lined up in the hallway and didn't react to anything unless they were given directions. They just stood there.
Was it a hostile environment? Were the aliens themselves hostile?
No, not that I would say. The larger the craft, the more types of entities were working together. The larger gray was definitely a living being. And he, my escort, was one of those. The one that was what I called the doctor was an insect-like being, very serious. Nothing was funny. He showed a very, very slight bit of emotion when I got angry with what he was doing medically, and kind of passed to me this was something he had to do. It was part of his work. And so I had them touch my forehead. It took away fear and pain. And so that was that. It was just done. So that was another one. I saw one craft that created a great deal of emotion in me because it was a combination of mechanical, biological, you name it. It was a living being operating the craft, and there were many more like it. I was told that they were all in touch with each other, and it upset me from the minute I stepped in the door of that place. And I was under hypnosis. Kathleen was hypnotizing me to see where I was. We didn't expect this. And it was organic, you name it, that's what was operating that craft. And I reacted to it. She brought me out of hypnosis because she said it looked like someone was punching me. She could see movement in my muscles. She could see fear. Some of that reaction has remained to this day, and the doctors can't diagnose it. And I know why, but I can't tell them. I can't tell them where it came from. I did ask her to put me under hypnosis again and to please video it, and she has that on video.
Okay. Well, did the aliens communicate with you at all? And if they did, how did they communicate? Do you remember what they actually were saying to you?
Telepathy, I would say. They never opened their mouths. My escort did a lot by touch. Used his hand on my arm or my forehead, and I received some information that way. Like it's going to be okay touching this way. Everything will be all right. Don't be afraid. Never said I care for you or we care for you, but it was the same entity, the same ET, the same gray that took me from age 2.5 until just about 5 years ago. The same one has always come for me. How do I know? I just do. There's some subtle differences. If you put the ET in a lineup and I was asked to find him, I could. If I had others with me and they were asked to find him, they could not tell the difference.
Yeah. Okay, well, a couple more questions on that. One, did you feel that you were being treated like an inferior species, or were you on a similar level to them as friend to friend?
Not friend to friend, but I was not being treated or looked down upon, let's put it that way. They needed some of what I had, I think. Just my opinion, not anybody else's, that they had taken out or bred out of themselves something that they suddenly realized they needed and still need. And I think they're trying to breed it back in. They need some of our DNA. They need something that we have in the way of kindness. They don't know, I think, how to love. that strongly emotions. They've lost that, and they realize they can't continue without knowing what empathy is, sympathy, those types of things, and to strengthen both our DNA and theirs.
Okay. What about aroma? Did you smell any? Could you decipher the smell inside the spacecraft as opposed to what you would breathe or smell here down on Earth?
I did. It's hard to describe. Have you ever smelled or felt something that I would smell ionization type thing, something that is it's sharp, very sharp scent, very, very, very clean. I felt like I could breathe really well. It struck my senses, and it was almost too much for me. It was almost too clean. I think that's the strongest sense that I had as far as smell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you raised a pretty interesting point earlier when you said there were different species of aliens working together. I guess almost like an alien United Nations. What do you think they actually want from us, other than what you said a moment ago about replacing or improving their own physiology? Do you think there's like a concerted effort out there where they won't reveal themselves to us quite just yet, because we're not on an intellectual level as they are at the moment, but there will come a time eventually when they will?
They will, I believe, if we stop with our warlike efforts against each other, for one thing. We just can't stop arguing and battling against each other, and it's with everything. We don't agree at all. And maybe, or perhaps, that's what they're trying to breed out of us. We look at other creatures on our own planet and capture them and take a look and say, boy, look at that. Well, you look at an ant colony, they've got it all together. Bees, they've got it all together. But you look at some of the other creatures and they certainly don't, and there's no way we can figure out how to control them. So if I were in one of those crafts and flew down and took a look at us, I wouldn't want to land and say, hi there, can we get this straightened out somehow? Because it wouldn't work with us. We're argumentative.
Mm-hmm.
Very opinionated also.
Yeah, I concur with that. Kathleen Martin's going to be joining us in the next few days, and she's going to be telling us about her experiences. When did you actually meet up with Kathleen and your work together? I mean, you've both achieved a lot, but from the point of view of opening up this topic more to other people, how successful has that been? Has it been well accepted?
Well, it depends on the individual, because for so many, their faith base has a lot to do with it. If they can't open that door and put that third box in the middle and let some of that information jump in so they can sort it out, no. They're going to stick to what they're safe with, what they feel safe with, then that's going to take some time. And we don't have anything to show them yet. What is a bag of marks on someone's body? Different marks, unless we can say, well, this is what came with it. This is where they've been to get those marks. They might have a strong belief in Jesus being here, Buddha, all of those characters. They don't want to say they didn't exist, that they didn't come here to help us. And they don't have to have proof, but they won't allow that for these experiences.
The book you and Kathleen co-authored together, the Alien Abduction Files, released back in May of 2013. When, why did you decide to write the book, and was there a particular theme you wanted to follow when putting it together?
There was, so that people could read about the people that had experiences like myself that had been well investigated. And when Kathy and I met, we should have met years ago, because we've known each other now for 12 or 13 years. We found out she came to Florida from New Hampshire. She came to one of my meetings. I recognized her, but I didn't know if she wanted to disclose who she was at my meeting, so I didn't say anything. And finally, I went up and introduced myself, and I invited her to my home for lunch. And during the lunch, we started to talk, and I mentioned a town in Colorado, Gunnison, where I had lived. And she had a strange look on her face and said, "When did you live there?" I told her it was a little town at the time with 2 crossroads. Well, it turned out that I lived on a corner street, and one of the crossroads went to an area in another little town that is now a big ski town. Very, very wealthy. And she happened to live there at the same exact time that I did, and we probably both saw the same craft over the hills between us on the same day. And we started to talk about it and why would that occur. And we both moved out without ever having met each other, and we were actually 25 minutes down that road from each other. There was nothing between us but an old country road that went to her town. And then years went by, and when we met at the lunch, she told me that she was from New Hampshire. My dad was born in New Hampshire. I was born in Connecticut, but we spent a lot of time in his town. There was just an awful lot that matched up. We started talking about experiences that we had both had. I didn't know if I wanted mine disclosed until she said, "Would you like me to investigate yours?" And it felt right, and I knew that I could trust her. She drove through every single place that I had been taken, came back and told me what she found. And a lot of it resembled what her Aunt Betty and Barney Hill had gone through. The experience with our car, the way we were taken. So it all just worked, and we're still doing research together. I wrote most of 2 chapters for her new book, and considering writing documentation on investigation I did for a new one.
Denise, there seems to be a little bit of a theme here too when you say you've been abducted, several times over a number of years. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason they keep going back to the same people? Because we hear this from other abductees as well.
My belief, again, just my opinion, I think I signed up for this a long time ago, perhaps before I was born this time.
Are you saying it's something that's inherited?
Both, inherited and contractual.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I wonder whether it's got something to do with a person's I was reading the other day about Rh positive and Rh negative blood, and the theory behind that. Do you think it may have something to do with that?
I think that it does. I don't have Rh blood, but there's a group of people that do. And Kathy could tell you, but there is a town, and I think it's in Spain, where every single person that lives there has Rh factor. Okay. Negative, yes. She can tell you the name of it. I have the universal blood type O positive. So how does that connect? I think it might also.
All right. So in your work with MUFON and FREE, which is Foundation Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, You've come across a lot of cases. Have you found some cases that are more severe than others?
Yes. There are some where people are under constant, I would say they're being watched, and it's on a weekly, every other day basis, and they have the ringing in their ears to warn them that they're being watched. They have the men in black, the women in black saying, okay, we just showed you this. You're not to talk about it right now. I've had that experience too, but not daily, not weekly. They have unusual marks on their bodies more often. They're told that they're here to help work with whatever is going to occur. They believe something's coming. We all have that feeling, but some are more intense, and that they're here to help out when this, whatever it is, happens.
In the last 10 to 20 years, this topic has certainly come out into the open a lot more than people used to talk about it. Do you find that we would be shocked if we knew exactly how widespread this was, as compared to a lot of people may be thinking it's just isolated cases?
I think they would be shocked. And more people are coming out and saying, oh, so-and-so did it. Oh, I'm reading about this. Oh, here's 10 more. I'm going to do it. I'm getting brave, and I'm feeling freer, and so I'm going to talk about it. And I know that because of the support group meetings that I hold, and there are more and newer ones that I'm meeting. So yes, absolutely. And we're now dropping into some work that I'm doing with past life. I was hypnotized to see, did I have this going on in a past life? Well, I found out that we at least had close-in sightings and crafts coming up into an old mining town. If, in fact, that's true, can't prove it. The crafts chasing everybody in that mining community up the hill. We ran away into the mine tailings towards the mine to hide from them. I haven't explored it any further than that, but something went on.
Might be the subject of another interview at some stage down the track. Well, what would you recommend people do? Because obviously there's people will keep it to themselves because of the stigma associated with it. Probably not so much now as in the past. But if someone has had an abduction experience and they've kept it to themselves, what would you recommend they do to perhaps take the pressure off themselves?
Well, they can go to MUFON.com, and if they go over to the right, they'll see a place where they can go into ERT, which is Experiencers Research Team. I'm Kathleen Marden's personal assistant. It shows you can fill out an 30-question questionnaire. That will go to the director, Dr. George Medich. We have, I think, 30 of us now. One of us will be assigned that questionnaire to score, and they'll receive a phone call, and it'll be very private. They can talk about their experience. They'll receive advice what to do, and there are several things that they can do if they don't want this to occur anymore. Not that we can shut it off totally, but we'll give them a lot of advice on what to do, and they'll have someone to talk to from then on.
Yeah, you hit a key point there, a safe environment. Not that they need to go public with it, but just to talk with people that will understand them.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's certainly been a interesting chat, Denise. Your association with MUFON now, how far back does that go?
Goes back to, I began in about 1999, but I did not join as far as wanting to work and investigate until 2003. Okay. And that's when I joined and became a field investigator, and then moved on from there.
Okay. All right. You mentioned the Men in Black a few moments ago. I was going to ask you this at the end of our chat. MIB, Men in Black, it's a topic that, people either dismiss or some people take seriously, but there's just been so much evidence that these characters tend to show up at inopportune times, or I should say opportune times, and they scare the living daylights out of people.
Yeah, they're interesting characters. I can say that I'm still here, that the subtle threat they made to me, they didn't follow through, obviously. This has been back, I would say now maybe 8 years. Christmas Eve with my mom in Penny's buying a last-minute gift, and we saw something that we were shown, I think on purpose. 2 blonde gals came in with a stroller and a baby in it, no accessories, no diaper bag, no nothing, no purses, and the child was definitely a gray. Great big eyes, and they kept wheeling back and forth and nodding at it, my mom and I, to look at it. The people in front of us at the cash register, there was only 2, were frozen. I tried tapping the gal on the shoulder, saying, "Look at that." She was not moving, not recognizing. The cashier, same thing. And they passed us to go to infants' clothing. I followed her, or them, they were twins, and they disappeared. They were gone. And so we got back. Everybody was in motion again. We paid for our goods, went out the door. The only thing out those double doors was a brick wall of the mall. And to enter Penny's, right across from us were our cars. And everybody was leaving for the night at Christmas Eve. It wasn't dark. The sun was setting, but it wasn't dark. My mom was just quick on her feet. She went right across to the car, and I was carrying the bags, so I was a little slower, and stepped over, and I heard somebody say, "Don't repeat anything about what you were shown in that store." I turned around, looked over my shoulder, 3 men in black with hats and a briefcase leaning against the brick wall. And I turned around, they said, "Step up here," so I did. And he said, "Did you hear what I said?" They were very threatening, and I just nodded yes. And then I stepped off the curb, went to my mom, and when I turned around, they were gone. There was nowhere for them to go. They had locked the door behind us to the store. They had to go straight down the sidewalk a long distance to the other parking lot or come across where we were. They were gone.
Did you get a sense that they were even human?
No, their faces were kind of doughy looking and a tan color. They were wearing the sunglasses and the black hats.
Wow.
And the suits. Yep.
It's got to be scary.
Yeah, and then when we got in the car, my mom said, "Did you see that baby? Did you see those women? What was wrong with that baby?" And of course, I couldn't answer her. So I just said, I don't know. Something was wrong, but I don't know.
Okay.
So,
Denise, it's been great having you on for the chat today. I'm sure we'll talk again in the near future. But one final thing. Again, let's encourage those people who have had an abduction experience to go to the MUFON site and just make contact with someone there. We're not asking them to go public, but
no.
Maybe just get in a safe environment and stop living their life in fear.
Right, absolutely. Fill out that questionnaire, that 30-question questionnaire, and then connect with the ERT. Yes.
Fantastic. All right, Denise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's researcher, author, and MUFON National Experiencer team member Denise Stoner. Well, the UFO cover-up has been alive and well since the Roswell incident, or so it seems. But how far does it really go back? Was Roswell the start, or was it happening well before 1947? From the moment Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 disc-shaped objects over Washington state, to Roswell a week later, the UFO conspiracy machine appeared to get into overdrive. And more than 70 years later, it appears to be alive and well, albeit with snippets of disclosure being evident recently. Can you give us an example of a typical cover-up process?
I can think of one. Well, Roswell, of course, because of the people thought it was a UFO and then changed their mind. there's been a lot of them, such as Project Blue Book, where they claim they didn't find anything. Big things such as the Robertson panel and the Kahneman report, where they both said that they didn't find anything. And in one of my books, Sacred Quarters, I went into quite a bit of detail about Battelle and their research on UFOs. They were doing they're top scientists. Battelle's a really well-known scientific organization. It was one of the developers of Xerox and things, and CDs and other things, and in charge of a number of labs. So they were real good scientists. And they did a study of UFOs. And before they finished, the CIA had the Robertson panel, and the Battelle had asked them in a letter that was later leaked to not do the study yet because they didn't have the information. And the CIA went right ahead with the study and then claimed there was nothing to UFOs, which...
Right. I mean, does your intel indicate why why the cover up, why they need to keep it quiet?
Well, I think to start with, it started out when UFOs first started out, they didn't know whether it was military or something from another country. And I think they wanted to keep that information secret. And they also wanted to keep it secret if they had new advances and things and were discovering new developments that they could find from UFOs. But so I think there was reasons why they started it, because it was just considered a military thing. But after all these years, you don't know.
Right. Dr. Irena Scott brought up some interesting news during Aliens Revealed Live when she suggested the UFO cover-up has been going on well before Roswell. In fact, during her research and working life, Dr. Scott has worked at some of the top secret facilities and spoken with individuals with information not usually afforded to Mr. and Mrs. Average. That's coming up next week here on the Aliens Revealed Live Files. Well, thanks for being with us. Don't forget to check out our site at arlhub.com. That's arlhub.com. And as always, keep looking upwards and take care.